You think you know what you do. Until your card declines, your kid is hungry, a purse is on the ground. Nobody saw you pick it up. Every story has two choices. The first is survival. The second is what you do after you know who paid for it. Enjoy. The Moral Mirror, Episode 1.
It's raining harder than the weather app said it would. You're in your car in a grocery store parking lot. The engine is off. A plastic bag of bread and milk sits on the passenger seat. That's all you could buy. Your card just declined on the chicken. Your kid is at home. They haven't asked about dinner yet, but they will.
The Find.
You're about to start the car when you see it. A purse on the wet asphalt, 2 parking spaces away, brown leather, strap twisted, half open. You watch it for a second to make sure nobody comes back for it. Nobody does. You get out. The rain hits your jacket as you cross the asphalt. You're not running. You're not even sure why you're walking toward it. You tell yourself you're going to bring it inside. Hand it to the manager. Be a decent person about it. You pick it up. It's heavier than you expected. You glance at the storefront. Through the glass doors, you can see the cashier scanning groceries for somebody else, the security guard scrolling on his phone, and an old man in a wet hat squeezing the tomatoes. Nobody's looking at you. You open the purse, a wallet, lipstick, a pack of gum, a pharmacy receipt folded in half and tucked behind the wallet, an envelope. The envelope isn't sealed. You can already see the edge of the bills. You don't open it in the parking lot. Some part of you knows that would be stupid. You walk back to your car like you're carrying a normal purse. Get in, shut the door, and only then do you slide the envelope out. You count it twice because the first time you don't believe it. $2,000, cash. You sit there with the envelope in your lap and the rain on the windshield, and you do that thing where your brain starts doing math without permission. Rent, power, the phone bill that's already gone to collections, gas, food for at least 2 weeks, if you're careful. Then your phone buzzes in the cup holder. You already know who it is before you look. Dad, are we eating tonight? You stare at the message. You stare at the envelope. You stare at the rain. You weren't always sitting in a car in the rain with $2,000 that wasn't yours.
How you got here?
6 weeks ago, you had a job. 6 weeks ago, you walked into a small office at the back of the warehouse, and a man you'd worked under for 4 years told you the company was restructuring. He used the word valued 3 times in 2 minutes. He couldn't look at you when he said it. You drove home with a cardboard box on the passenger seat. Inside was a coffee mug, a pair of work gloves, a photo of your kid at 5 years old holding a fish they didn't actually catch, and a badge you weren't allowed to keep, but they let you take anyway because you'd been there long enough. You told your kid you were between jobs. You said it casually. You smiled too fast. Your kid is 10. They smiled back. Then they watched you for a second longer than a 10-year-old should. The first week, you believed it would be fine. You updated your resume. You applied to 12 places. By the end of the second week, you'd applied to 40. By the end of the third week, you'd stopped counting. The emails all started the same way. We appreciate your interest. You stopped reading past the first line. You started cutting things. Cable first, then the streaming. Then you stopped buying coffee. Then you stopped buying anything that wasn't food. Then you started cutting food. Your kids stopped asking for snacks somewhere in week 4. You didn't tell them to stop. They just did. That's what scared you the most. Not the empty fridge, not the bills, but the way your 10-year-old started reading the room like an adult. Last week, you watched them break a granola bar in half at the kitchen table. They looked at both pieces. Then they gave the bigger half to themselves and ate it fast. You don't know if you imagined it, but you swear they checked over their shoulder. First, to make sure you weren't watching. You were watching. You didn't say anything.
Present day.
Today, you had $14 left in your account. You knew it because you checked it 3 times on the drive over. The app said the same thing every time. You went in. You took a basket, not a cart, because a cart felt like you were pretending. You put in milk, bread, eggs, a small package of chicken with a yellow discount sticker, and a bag of apples because your kid likes apples. You counted it in your head while you walked. You counted it again in the line. It came to $19.40. You almost left right then, but you'd already put the basket on the belt, and the woman behind you had already started loading her stuff, and the embarrassment of walking out was somehow bigger than the embarrassment of staying. You handed over the card. The reader beeped wrong. The cashier, a kid, maybe 19, gave you that face cashiers make when they already know. Want me to try it again? You said yes, quietly. It beeped wrong, again. The woman behind you was looking at her phone now, aggressively looking at her phone, the kind of looking that's pretending so hard it becomes the opposite of looking. You said, take the chicken off. He took the chicken off. $14.85. And the apples. $11.20. And the eggs. You walked out with bread and milk and a feeling in your chest like you'd swallowed something the wrong way. And now you're sitting in your car with $2,000 in your lap and a text from your kid that says, "Dad, are we eating tonight?" You know what the right thing is. You've always known. Your dad taught you. Your grandmother taught you. Every Sunday school class you ever sat through taught you. If you find something that isn't yours, you give it back. That's not complicated. That's not philosophy. That's the whole thing in one sentence.
The choice.
You sit there holding $2,000 and you start telling yourself things. You tell yourself you're just looking at it. You haven't done anything yet. You tell yourself you should find out whose it is first. You take out the wallet. You look at the ID. A woman, 40-something, brown hair in the photo. Her name doesn't matter. What matters is she's not you. She has a license. She has a car. She has a purse expensive enough to be real leather. She has $2,000 in cash that she was carrying around like it was nothing. You tell yourself she's probably fine. You tell yourself she probably has someone to call. You tell yourself you only need a little. Just enough for tonight. Just enough for the week. You'd return the rest. You'd find her. You'd figure it out tomorrow. You don't say, "I'm going to steal this." You say, "I'm going to borrow it. I'm going to fix it later." You're already moving the money in your head. You're already deciding which bills to pay first. You're already doing it. You haven't done anything. Your phone buzzes again. Dad? You're sitting in the car. The purse is in your lap. The cash is in your hand. Your kid is at home. Nobody saw you pick it up. What do?
What you took.
You took some, not all of it. That part mattered to you. You needed to believe you weren't the kind of person who'd take all of it. So you took $600 and you put the rest back in the envelope, and you put the envelope back in the purse, and you told yourself you'd figure out how to return it tomorrow. You drove to a different grocery store. You didn't want to go back to the one where the card had declined. You bought chicken. You bought rice. You bought milk and cereal and apples and a package of cookies your kid likes, the cheap kind with the cream in the middle. You bought eggs. You bought a frozen pizza for tomorrow. You bought everything you'd been doing without for a month. The cashier scanned it all. The card worked because you paid in cash. He handed you the receipt and said, "Have a good night." And you said, "You too." And you walked out into the rain with 4 grocery bags and a stomach that felt like it was somebody else's. You drove home. You carried the bags up the stairs. You unlocked the door. Your kid was on the couch with their tablet, and when they saw the bags, they sat up so fast the tablet slid off their lap, and they didn't even notice. "Are those for us?" "Yeah, buddy, they're for us." You made chicken and rice. The kitchen filled up with the smell of food cooking, which is something you hadn't noticed you'd missed until it came back. Your kid set the table without being asked. They put out 2 plates. They asked if they could have a cookie after. You said yes. You watched them eat for about 10 minutes, sitting at that kitchen table, watching your kid eat a real dinner for the first time in 2 weeks. You didn't feel guilty. You felt good. That's the part nobody talks about. The wrong thing worked.
The note.
After dinner, your kid went to take a shower, and you sat at the kitchen table and you opened the purse again. You weren't going to. You were going to leave it alone. You were going to figure it out tomorrow. But you opened it. You took out the wallet. You took out the cash envelope. You took out the lipstick and the gum. And you took out the pharmacy receipt. It wasn't a receipt. It was a note, folded twice, handwritten in careful letters at the top. "Mama, pharmacy, pay before 7 p.m., pick up before they close." Below it, the name of a medication you didn't recognize and a dollar amount. $1,847. You sat with the note in your hand for a long time. You thought about the woman in the parking lot, the one whose ID you'd looked at. You'd never actually seen her, just her picture on the license. But now you could picture her, suddenly, with a sharpness you didn't want. A woman in her 40s, brown hair, a mother somewhere. Maybe at home, maybe at a hospital, maybe in a bed waiting. Maybe sick enough that the medication was the kind that mattered, the kind that costs $1,847, the kind you can't get later because the pharmacy closes. You looked at the clock on the microwave. 7:42 p.m.
Through the eyes.
Through the eyes of the law, you stole. It doesn't matter that your kid was hungry. It doesn't matter that your card declined. It doesn't matter that you took 600 instead of 2,000. The law doesn't grade on a curve. You picked up something that wasn't yours, and you kept some of it. That's the whole equation. That's the sentence in the statute. That's the line on the police report. Through the eyes of your kid, you came home with groceries. That's all they know. That's all they'll ever know if you don't tell them. They had a good dinner. They got a cookie. They went to bed with a full stomach for the first time in weeks. To them, you're not a thief. You're their parent who fixed it. Through the eyes of the woman, somebody took her purse out of the rain and took $600 from her, and her mother didn't get the medication she needed tonight. She doesn't know about your kid. She doesn't know about the card decline. She doesn't know you took less than you could have. She knows she had $2,000 in her purse, and now she has $1,400 in her purse, and her mother is waiting, and the pharmacy is closed, and she's standing somewhere right now trying to figure out what to do. Through the eyes of the mother, she doesn't get her medication. She doesn't know any of this happened. She just knows her daughter said she had the money, and now her daughter is crying on the phone. 4 people, same $600, 4 completely different stories about who you are. You put your kid to bed. You told them you loved them. They told you they loved you back. They asked if there could be eggs for breakfast, and you said yes, there could be eggs for breakfast. You waited until you heard them stop moving. Then you got in the car. You drove to the pharmacy on the receipt. It was 12 minutes away. The lights were off when you pulled in. The closed sign was lit. The parking lot was almost empty, except for one car. A woman sitting in the driver's seat with her face in her hands.
The second choice.
You parked across the lot. You sat there with the purse on the passenger seat. You'd brought $1,400 with you. You hadn't spent the rest. You'd thought the whole drive over that you'd give it back, that you'd walk up to her window and tell her you found it and hand it over and apologize for taking what you took. You'd thought you'd be honest. But sitting there, watching her cry into her hands across a wet parking lot, you realized something. You didn't bring the $1,400 to give it back. You brought it to find out what kind of person you were. If you got out of the car, you were one kind. If you drove away, you were another. Your phone buzzed. Dad, thanks for dinner. Good night. You looked at the phone. You looked at the woman. You looked at the purse on the passenger seat with $1,400 in it and a note about her mother's medication that you couldn't unread. Your hand is on the door handle. Her car is 40 feet away. You can still do the right thing. The right thing is going to cost you everything. What do you do?
Conclusion.
The script ends here. You don't get to know what they did. That part isn't the story. The story is that for one night, a parent in a parking lot looked at $600 and decided their kid mattered more than a stranger's mother. And then later, sitting in a different parking lot with the rest of the money in their lap, they had to decide it again, this time with their eyes open. Maybe they opened the door. Maybe they didn't. Maybe you would have. Maybe you wouldn't have. The question this video is actually asking isn't whether you'd take the money. Most people sitting in that car with that kid at home and that text on their phone, most people would take some of it. Maybe not all, maybe just enough. They'd tell themselves they were going to bring it back. The question is what you'd do at the end, when you knew, when the woman was crying across the parking lot and the pharmacy was closed and the medication wasn't going to happen tonight. What you do then is who you actually are. We don't decide who we are when things are easy. We decide it when the right thing costs us something we can't afford to lose. You think you know what you do, until you're the one in the car.
The Moral Mirror. Like and subscribe for future episodes.